Nicolas Cage. Yep. Was it Abba Dabba or Yabba Dabba?
Abba Dabba, I think was his name.
Yeah.
Yabba Dabba Doo.
Yabba Dabba Doo. Yep. '84 movie, The Cotton Club, also by Francis Ford Coppola. We've talked about him in the past. This movie stars Richard Gere, Diane Lane, and Gregory Hines, among other great names. The movie is centered around a Harlem jazz club from the 1930s named the Cotton Club, and it is a crime drama, and I found out slightly based on reality. Hopefully by this point, the introduction that I've just given you has acted as a trailer for the movie, and you're kind of intrigued to find out what the movie is about. So please go ahead and watch the movie. It is on Amazon Prime, so if you're subscribed to it, you can just watch it there, and then come back and join us for the discussion. How are you doing, David?
Doing well, as always. How's your week?
Good. My week was not very, not very special. I kept on playing more of Shadow of Mordor. I've gotten really well at this point. I'm just like a raid boss now. I don't know if we talked about this, but you're not watching The Mandalorian, right?
So I watched the first episode.
Right.
I know that season 2 is out, but yeah, I still have to watch the first season. Oh, and I saw that they announced 9 shows for Star Wars stuff, which is very, very exciting.
It was ridiculous. The other day, this was on Friday, I think, the new episode came, and then they announced a bunch of shows for the next however long, But yeah, The Mandalorian was really good. Second season has kept, frankly, I'm not a huge Star Wars buff like some people are, I'm not crazy about it. I watched the original trilogy, and then I also watched the prequels, but I was like, meh, Rogue One was really good. We talked about Rogue One in the past. But once I started watching The Mandalorian, I'm all in, So after the first season, I went back and started watching Clone Wars. I have been continuing. I'm almost done with Clone Wars, and I'm going to jump to Rebels, and then I'll have caught up. So yeah, The Mandalorian is great. I don't know how I feel about plugging in another show in our podcast, but it's a great show. How was your week?
My week was good. I actually was going to tell you about this game yesterday. I got I subscribed to the Xbox Game Pass, which gives you games for the PC as well. And there's this one game called Hollow Knight. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's a platformer where it's it's not sci-fi by any means, but it's a fantasy game, and you're in this world and you have to uncover secrets about it, and it's a platformer. The world is very, very immersive. I was playing it yesterday for an hour or so, and it was really, really intriguing. So if you get a chance to play it or get it, I highly recommend it, and I'll let you know how it goes. But yeah, my week was good. Last week to go before Christmas break. We're gonna go to New York next weekend. We'll be driving up there to be shielded from COVID. And yeah, looking forward to the Christmas week.
Nice. Yeah, me too. Actually, and Cyberpunk dropped this past week as well, and oh boy, it's all over Reddit. I haven't played it myself. I'm gonna wait. I usually wait for games until the glitches are resolved and whatnot, and hopefully it goes on a sale at some point. I'm not crazy about playing a game right after it comes out, but of course it's a really hyped game. It's been hyped for a while, and it's been delayed for a while. And I don't know if you saw it, but Kurzgesagt made a video on it too, and that was pretty cool.
Very fascinating stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. And you also know I've been writing recently. I have continued. It's gonna be done in a week, so I'll let you know. Thanks for your help on it too, by the way, and I'll let you know how it goes. This project is almost done, so I'm looking forward to the final product. Cool. All right, perfect. So, shall we get into the movie then?
Let's do it.
All right. You want to go over the synopsis and stuff?
Yeah. All right. So, The Cotton Club movie by Francis Ford Coppola, like you said, from 1984. First thing right off the bat that stood out to me, and then obviously was explained by the plot of the movie, was that it's co-written with Mario Puzo, who is the writer of The Godfather. So right when I saw his name, I figured that it would be obviously mobster related, some politicking, but I did not expect it to be so musical from a Mario Puzo either screenplay or original book. Basically, it centers around the Cotton Club, which is a club in Harlem in the late 1920s, right at the end of the Harlem Renaissance, in Harlem, New York City, and it follows different people that are related to the club. So the main focus of the movie is the club, and then we see the people around it and how they interact with each other, and then how that evolves into kind of the mobster scene in New York City at the time. And interestingly enough, like you said, it is based on real events, or mostly real events. The Cotton Club was a club in Harlem. The two brothers, it seems like they didn't go by the same exact name, but there was a brother duo that used to perform tap dancing at the Cotton Club. Many of the singers, I mean, they mentioned Duke Ellington. The main mobster, Dutch Schultz, is also based on a real person. I don't know about Richard Gere's character, Dixie Dwyer. Is he?
Yeah, so the owner was Oni Madden, the guy who owns, and again, it's loosely based on his real life. But then Dixie, he was based on a real life actor, George Raft, who did work for Oni Madden and who ended up going on to play like mobster in movies and stuff. So it's loosely based on that actor, I think.
Interesting. So yeah, I would say that it is pretty much based on true events. Maybe some names were mixed here and there and changed, but it follows, first of all, two sets of two brothers. First, the two tap dancers, Sandman, and I forget his other name. Do you remember his name?
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Yeah. Well, Sandman and his brother.
The tap dancing brothers. Yes.
Yeah. And then it follows Dixie Dwyer and Vincent Dwyer. Vincent Dwyer played by Nicolas Cage.
Yep.
Dixie Dwyer played by Richard Gere, who is really, really young at the time. And then it follows also the main girl, who is Diane Lane. And then it follows the owner of the club, Oni Madden. He is tied in with the mob in New York City, and that's how we gain exposure to Dutch Schultz, who was also a mobster in New York City. And basically it just revolves around these characters from 1928 to 1931. Main things from the movie is, character development of the two brothers, both sets of brothers. Again, the tap dancers, at one point they go their own separate ways and then they come back together. And then how the Dwyers change from being tight-knit and wanting to work together to Vincent dying at the hands of Dutch Schultz because he wants to get power in the mob, which we'll explain in a little. And then Dixie Dwyer going on to make movies in Hollywood and potentially being involved with a mob in the West Coast, but that's not clear. What did you think of the movie overall?
So I thought it was an interesting movie. Right off the bat, I noticed some familiar faces, like, Richard Gere, Diane Lane. Actually, funny thing, Diane Lane got, I don't know if she got awarded or not, but she was up for the Razzie award for this movie. And after I learned this, I was like, yeah, she didn't really do well. But anyways, I noticed Lawrence Fishburne as well, again. His character was also based on a real-life mobster of that period, I think. And he apparently reprised this role like 13 years later in another movie. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then the Dutch guy, Dutch Schultz, the actor that portrayed him, I recognized immediately because have you ever seen the show Dexter?
I watched the first season.
Yeah, so Dexter's dad
Oh
is played by
yeah.
the same actor. Yeah. I recognized him immediately because he has this very unique voice, like a deeper timbre of voice. And in this movie, it was not really. I mean, he's much older when he plays Dexter's dad, and somehow he has more hair. But anyways, I thought his character was interesting as well. But yeah, I noticed all these people, and actually two more that I did notice towards the end of the movie. One was Giancarlo Esposito, our boy from Breaking Bad. He came on briefly, right? He's also in The Mandalorian, by the way. I don't know if you knew that, but he plays a really cool role in Mando. He came for a second, and I was able to notice him. I'm like, that's him, like Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I looked it up, and he was indeed there. He's one of Lawrence Fishburne's henchmen. And then another was, there was a gunman at the end of the movie who worked for Madden. And he was also from Breaking Bad. He was the uncle with the ringing.
Yeah, and the wheelchair and
Theo,
the bell.
Yeah. I forget his name. Theo something. It was really cool to see these guys. So for the movie itself, I have like two different lines of thought. One of them is I thought the plot wasn't very impressive by any means. I mean, okay, cool, it's a mob movie. It was a cool social commentary of the time. Like, it was a nice like a timepiece movie, but the plot was pretty watered down version of Godfather trilogy. So if you really want kind of intrigue, like a mob intrigue movie, where you see a really cool power struggle, just watch the Godfather trilogy, or like Goodfellas or The Irishman from this year. That was also pretty good. But when it came to plot, I didn't enjoy it that much. What I did enjoy though was the actual Cotton Club, like the story around it, the performances by the tap dancers. Like, while watching that, the performances were so good, and I definitely enjoyed Coppola spending so much time on those performances on stage. I really enjoyed that. Some movies, they just kind of dance around stuff like that, and they just focus on the main characters, But I thought he did a really good job. If, like, the way I thought about it was, this was like the movies before the movies were a thing, or like back then, theater was the main form of entertainment, and you could see how it was a gathering place for people in Harlem, or in those times. So I really enjoyed the fact that he put so much focus on it. I'm assuming the actors who portrayed the performers were actual performers, because I thought they did a splendid job. So yeah, I'm kind of between those two things, a part of the movie I really enjoyed, but then a part of it I didn't really enjoy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not a huge fan of mobster movies to begin with, so that part of the movie I didn't really enjoy. I did like the show business aspect of it, and then, like we had mentioned before, the social commentary of it, the segregation still in the 1920s in New York City of the blacks and whites, and then how clubs would employ the blacks to play the instruments but not let them come in as customers. I thought that was really interesting. The mob aspect of it, I have to admit, I got more into it the last 15-20 minutes of the movie, because, and I think what did it to me was when Oni was starting to talk with the Italians of getting rid of Dutch Schultz to take over his racketeering portion of it. And it's really interesting. I read into the racket numbers that they show up in newspapers and stuff, and what they did was they chose these three numbers that I think the three numbers were based on the number of bets, or the amount of money that was raised in bets during horse racing, and then using those three numbers of that amount, they did like a lottery in Harlem, conducted by the Irish mafia, the Italian mafia, and then they would pretty much force these businesses to take part. And that's when you see like they assault businesses for racketeering. So it was a lottery, quote unquote, because if you were forced to participate, and then money was obviously taken away from you. But it was really interesting. I had only heard of racketeering in the sense of protection. You know, you pay me a certain number of monthly dues, and then at the I'm going to protect your business. Kind of like I remember playing Mafia when I was a kid. I think that was a Rockstar game, and there was another one on the I think it was Mafia, and you would go from business to business racketeering. So that's the only the and it's just not as exciting to me as I would have loved to have seen more of a Cotton Club with the performances as a main aspect. I think that would have been more interesting to me.
Right. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I actually looked into the racketeering stuff as well, and yeah, what you said really makes sense. Yeah, like you said, I only just thought it like extortion and protection money. But yeah, that's really cool. And the horse thing you bring up, I saw something really interesting. So in one of the scenes, I forget exactly who it was, but somebody was drawing a horse's head, which made me immediately think of The Godfather. If you remember the famous scene with the horse's head in the bed. Maybe it was a cool throwback to that. But then the racketeering stuff also makes sense. Maybe they were thinking of horses. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so the horses was also it was also apparent to me because it reminded me of the Godfather scene, and it comes up a few times during the movie too. He's drawing the horses in his in his booth in the corner, and then at the end of the movie when he picks up the phone, I think, to give the call to assassinate Dutch, he's drawing the face of a horse, which was pretty interesting too.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So, who do you think was the most interesting character, or what character pairing did you enjoy the most, in your opinion?
The characters that I enjoyed the most were the two tap dancing brothers. I wish we could have seen more of their family life, because we do see that at the beginning. But I think that they both go. I think it's interesting because they both go into show business. They seem to be like a duo that is sold as a duo. And then it's interesting how Sandman kind of wants to become his own act, and he asks, I can't remember his name, the director of the cast, that big guy that gets bullied at the end. Sandman asks him if he can have a solo, and he eventually does. And the brother, he sees it as backstabbing, which is unfortunate, but I get it. If you're associated with your brother for show business, and you're in the Cotton Club because of your brother too, to an extent, I understand why it would be backstabbing. But then I like how they part ways. They become famous in their own respects, and then there's a reconciliation in the Brothers Club when he shows up to visit him, and they hug it out. And then by the end, what's really cool to me is that they both end up back at the Cotton Club, having duos and having solos as well.
Yeah. I definitely like that. It was cool that Sandman was friends with Dixie as well, and he ends up saving his life at the end. I thought that was pretty cool. It shows that Dixie was a pretty stand-up guy as well, and he had good connections in the area. It was very apparent that Dixie's family also grew up very poor, and that's why you end up seeing him and his brother Vince doing things for money, making ends meet and whatnot. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed their pairing as well. For me, a really interesting relationship or friendship was Oni Madden and Frenchie. I don't know if he's his bodyguard, his partner, his right-hand man. I thought their interaction was really interesting. First of all, I thought in a typical mob way, Oni Madden, just looking at him, he was not very threatening or dangerous by any means, but Frenchie was the big guy, and it was really interesting when Nicolas Cage's character Vince kidnaps him, asks for money, and then later he's released and goes back. And I really like the reconciliation scene between those two. Apparently that scene, they almost cut out of the movie, but then someone convinced Coppola to put it back. I thought that scene was fantastic, where he breaks the watch and then he already has a new watch. Yeah, I found that. And while I was watching that movie, first thing is I was really wishing the character that, so it was this actor, Bob Hoskins, an English guy who ended up playing Oni Madden. Apparently when he got the phone call from Coppola to play that role, he did not believe him, and he said, oh yeah, and I'm Elvis effing Presley, and he cut the phone. But then I would have rather seen someone more intimidating, like or someone that isn't intimidating, but when they mean business, they mean business. Like, for example, if they played Robert De Niro or Marlon Brando instead of him, think of that. Like, think of one of those two owning the club, and nobody's gonna mess with them. Like, you do not want to mess with those guys just by who they are, right? So I thought Bob Hoskins, no diss to him, like, I'm sure he's a great actor, but like, he just didn't feel like an intimidating person. And even when he's trying to settle the feud very early on in the movie, when he's trying to settle the feud between Dutch and one of the Flynn brothers that he ends up killing, he's trying to settle them down, and you just see that he isn't doing a great job. Like, I feel like if it was someone like De Niro or like Brando, they would have, one of them, like whoever played, they could have looked at those two and they would have just sat down in silence, So, I also read that apparently Sylvester Stallone was set to be the lead, but then he had trouble with one of the writers or producers and he backed off out of the role. I think of Dixie.
I don't see. So you're saying that Sylvester Stallone was gonna be Dixie?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Thank God he wasn't. I do not see, because
yeah,
he was probably huge at the time.
Yeah,
I don't see him as Dixie, but
yeah.
I was actually surprised by Richard Gere's performance. I haven't seen a whole lot of his movies, but he seemed at the very beginning, I couldn't recognize him with the circular glasses. And interestingly enough, he plays the cornet. So every time,
I read that. Yeah,
every
he
time
actually did his own.
Yeah, which is crazy because those solos are. I mean, it's jazz solos. There's nothing easy about them. I thought that was very, very interesting.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have too much more to say about the movie, or like the plot of the movie. Other than that, it was okay. I definitely enjoyed the social commentary aspect of it. I thought the whole Sandman and his girlfriend, that dynamic was pretty interesting because she was, her parents were, I think, white and black. So she looked fair, so she could pass off as white if she wanted to. So that's why she got access to whatever club she wanted to go. Whereas for Sandman, he couldn't do that because, like you said, they were allowed to perform but not be in the audience. And I thought it was interesting at the end, Lawrence Fishburne's character, I think Bumpy, his name was?
Yeah,
Bumpy. He could get into the club, but because I guess he's one of the mobsters that Oni Madden had a good relationship with, and that's why he could go in.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else other to say from the movie. Diane Lane, interestingly enough, she plays one of the main characters. She was in Rumblefish as well. Also the star, or one of the stars in The Outsiders. All three, including this one, Francis Ford Coppola movies. It's very interesting to see. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned this during our Rumblefish episode, but Tom Waits plays Benny. I think his name was the guy who owns the pool bar. He plays the MC of the show at the end. That's Tom Waits.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
So it's like little parts that you keep seeing, especially with Francis Ford Coppola. It's great, obviously, to see Nick Cage. But yeah, regarding the entire movie, one thing that I did wanna comment on is the brutality of how Dutch kills Flynn at the very beginning. They're in that buffet room. he grabs the carving knife and just stabs him in the neck.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
brutal.
that was brutal. Yeah, that was
I
brutal.
wasn't expecting such a gruesome scene, right? Like in the first
Yeah.
20 minutes of the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. I knew trouble was brewing though. Like he just seemed like a out of control character. Honestly, I'm frankly surprised he has survived for this long, you know? Like he could have been shanked like years ago. Like he just seems like a guy who just doesn't respect anyone that much, does what he wants, you know?
Yeah, he seemed off his rocker, and interestingly enough, in real life, he didn't die at the restaurant like they show him at the movie. A few of them actually survived. They go to the hospital, and Dutch dies 29 hours after he gets shot at the restaurant, which was in New Jersey. It wasn't in New York in real life, and it was torn down in 2008. But he dies in the hospital the day after, and I think out of the four people that were with him, it was like his accountant, one of his henchmen, and other people. I think they eventually all died.
Yeah.
Um,
Was it Abadaba or Yabadaba? One of
yeah, Abba Dabba, I think was his name.
his. Yeah.
Yabba
That's
Dabba
funny.
Doo.
Yabadaba. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's not my it hasn't been my favorite movie, so far. It's an interesting take. It's I was thinking about Rumblefish being in black and white, and the very first scene of the movie is in black and white, and I don't know if you remember, but they smash a beer bottle in the street, and I was hoping that it would be black and white because I think that would have put us more into the setting.
Yeah. I would. Yeah, I would have enjoyed that.
I'm actually happy it wasn't though, because then I don't think we would have been as into the dancing scenes and the show business aspect.
That's true. What they could have done is just shown the dancing bits in color, and then the rest of the movie in black and white. You know?
Actually, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
And then last thing I saw was that he re-released a mastered edition of the movie in 2017. And
Right.
Francis Ford Coppola spent $500,000 of his own
Yeah,
money
I saw that too.
remastering
That's
it.
crazy.
Yeah.
Is that the one that's on Amazon Prime? Because I saw the runtime for that one, and it kind of aligned with the runtime of the one that I saw in Amazon.
Yeah, I think it is. The one that he released in 2017 was 2.5 hours, I think. So half an hour more. It includes certain scenes that kind of restructure it in a different way, because the studio wouldn't pick the movie if it were more than two hours. So he was forced to cut it down, and then in 2015 he started work on creating kind of a new cut, which Rolling Stone said that it was eye-opening, quote unquote, which was interesting.
Yeah, now I'm not sure which one I watch. I'll go back and check it. But yeah, the performances I really enjoyed though. Like, I was just because I'm not super familiar with the jazz scene or like those performances, you know, like theater and stuff. I'm not super into, but I must say I really enjoyed those performances. Yeah, just for that I'm happy I watched the movie, you know.
Yeah, the only exposure I have to like tap dancing and show business kind of in the early 20th century is like Fred Astaire, like Dancing in the Rain, those classics. But it was a whole movement back then, especially with the Harlem Renaissance, which is like a flowering of black culture in the US, which it affected major cities: LA, Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, New York, Boston. Every big city in the US was impacted by it. And then it also went overseas to Paris. Some black writers in Paris were very influenced by the Harlem Renaissance. So I thought, yeah, again, going back to the cultural aspect of the movie, I thought that was the most important part of the movie to me, because it's part of our history, and we don't normally see that segregation put in a way or in context of the mob. It's like the first time that I've seen those social and racial aspects put into the context of the mob. I was thrown off for the first half of the movie, because I didn't know what was kind of interesting or where the writers wanted us to pay more attention to. I feel like 3/4 of the way, I was like, all right, I'm gonna care more about the show business, and that's what I'm gonna care for as a viewer. So yeah, overall decent movie, but not the best.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it makes sense that in these big cities, mobsters owned most of the most valuable commodities, you know? And judging by the fact that, like you said, you know, when the Renaissance happened and how valuable this business was, it makes sense that mobsters of those time would be owning some of the best, like the Cotton Club, you know, some of the best places that would bring audiences, be lucrative, something that you could launder money through as well, and you know, all of it. So it was very interesting.
What did you think of Nicolas Cage?
My boy Nicolas Cage, he again he goes back and forth, you know. He progresses and then regresses and then progress. For this movie, his role was definitely more minor. I thought it was super funny when I first heard him. I didn't even recognize him in the first scene when he pays for his brother. I didn't realize it was him. I had to go back because then I saw him and I'm like, shit, it's him. So I had to go back and watch it again. I thought his accent was like, you could feel that it was not super genuine, you know, like
Yeah.
you could tell. It was really funny. He really pushed it hard. But I thought he did his role pretty well. So he was the brother of Dixie. He climbed the ranks in the Dutch's first four Dutch, I think, and then later ended up doing his own thing. Got his right hand man killed, and then kidnapped Frenchie, and then got killed when, like, after that, when Madden was like, okay, this guy is trouble. I like the fact that I feel like there wasn't too much moral dilemma going on in the movie, but I like the fact that his character had to deal with it at one point. If you remember, him or his guys killed the hitman of the Dutch that killed his right hand man, and in the process, his men ended up killing 4 children on the road, which were, like, you know, collateral damage or casualties. And then everyone was pinning it on him. Like, there were papers out with his face on, talking about how, like, you know, gangsters were making this impact. And I can see how, first of all, that made it harder for you'd say the classier mobsters like Madden to have him around, because they're trying to run a business and this kind of publicity is bad for them. I think they mentioned at one point that there would be more cops in the streets and whatnot. And second of all, I really like the fact that his character was made to deal with this dilemma of having killed kids, even though he wasn't the one who did it. He is accused of doing it, and he realizes that he did it, even though it was not intended.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. The character is well played by Nicolas Cage. Not his strongest performance, I think, but overall, I think he did a good job. It's interesting, the character, he wants to. So, at the Cotton Club, at one point, he asks. Actually, no, this wasn't in the Cotton Club. I think it's in Vera's Club. Right when in 1929 there's the stock market crash. And then it seems like either the Cotton Club shuts down for a while, but during that year, we're seeing Vera's Club, and at that point he hasn't killed those kids yet, but Vincent Dwyer asks Schultz for a raise or some sort of more money for him and his henchmen, and he obviously gets declined. He gets a little bit, but you know, he tells him to put it where the sun don't shine. So eventually I think he takes matters into his own hands, wanting to control more than he's allowed to, and it attracts unneeded attention for Oni's empire, because Oni's empire is so much more than than what Vincent Dwyer can even imagine. Like I like what you said just a few minutes ago, that the Cotton Club could be used for a money laundering operation. And there is so much more that goes into money laundering, because you have rackets, you have other types of extortion across the city. I mean, there's hitmen that you have hired that you have to pay. You know,
and you have connections with like the Italians we see at the end. You know,
exactly, yeah, and then you have to play politics with all the other mafia families. Which, if you sidestep or go above their heads, you know, you're toast. So yeah, I think he wanted to take a bite of something bigger that he couldn't chew, and then he ends up getting capped. And I think the straw that breaks the camel's back is when he kidnaps Frenchie.
Oh yeah, then I was like, it's over. You know, Dixie knows it too. Dixie says, "Run as fast as you can," because you know, kidnapping the right hand of the mobster boss of the city is not the way to go.
Yeah, totally. So then, obviously, he eventually gets ambushed in a telephone booth, and it kind of made me sad to see that his wife / girlfriend was there too, and she's played by Jennifer Grey, who is the girl from Dirty Dancing. Tara let me know about that. I did not know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that scene kind of made me, you know, sad for him and her, but it was just the way to go. He was being reckless, but yeah. Overall, he did a decent job. I think he did a better job in Racing with the Moon than in the Cotton Club.
So I wonder if working with his uncle psychs him out, or is it just the role that he's given, you know? So in both the movies, the recent movies that he worked for his uncle, he's this conniving guy in a gang that wants to climb up, you know? He succeeded in the first case in Rumblefish, but he didn't this time around, sadly. But yeah, there's a pattern here.
Yeah. I'll say it again. I love the pattern of watching him grow up and seeing that he collaborates with Francis Ford Coppola, which forces us to see Francis Ford Coppola movies, and then we also see the tendencies that he has when he's making movies. So I wonder if we go back after a few more, because Nick Cage does a few more with Francis Ford Coppola. If we go back and watch The Godfather, for example, do we see those things mirrored? Whereas before we would have had no idea.
Yeah. I'm definitely excited to watch The Godfather again. I mean, it would be great if Nicolas Cage showed up in that, but he's not gonna. But
maybe, thankfully, that he wasn't in The Godfather. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, we might have to do a special episode on The Godfather at some point.
Yeah. That sounds great. We could do that for sure. If you guys would like to have us do The Godfather, please send us an email on theuncaging@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
So what did you think of what like rating would you give the movie in total?
So at first I was like, it's just like a 6, but I think because of the performance, I understand that Coppola tried to do again something different here. I feel like he could have gone the full gangster route, but he chose to shine the light on the performances themselves as well. I learned a lot about the jazz scene and, you know, tap dancing and whatnot. So I think I'll give it like a 6.5, maybe a 7.
So I gave it a 6.5, actually. And it's interesting, I'm just looking it up. The Godfather is from 1972. I thought it was in the approaching the 90s. So it's weird that he's kind of doing another mobster movie, and it's just not that executed, and it might have to do with the runtime of it, because The Godfather fleshes out a lot of characters and a lot of, you know, it spans a long time, whereas this one, it spans across 4 years, but during those 4 years, it's like we see a day of each year, and then we're supposed to kind of extrapolate that during the entire 3 years. And I don't think that was executed properly, so I gave it a 6.5.
Right. And I mean, The Godfather was, I mean, I know Mario Puzo worked on this as well, but Godfather was well based on the books first, right? Like the book came first and then it was fleshed out. So I feel like it was easier for him when the plot was already laid out, so he just had to make the movies. Whereas I feel like in this case, it was probably they wrote the script for the movies, so it probably didn't have so much time on development, and it didn't get polished. And of course, Godfather was a trilogy, so like you said, it's easier to flesh it out versus this movie.
Right.
Yeah. How about Nicolas Cage?
I gave Nicolas Cage a 7 out of 10 because while it's not my favorite of his performances up to now, he does a convincingly well enough job. I think the scenes where he has to be dramatic, he's a tad over dramatic, but that's just the Nick Cage flavor coming in. I liked seeing him again. There's a clear transition, like you said, specifically with his uncle's movies. But I'm seeing a pattern of him getting recognized in bigger and bigger movies, and as we'll see next week, he's again the co-star of that movie, very similar to Racing with the Moon. Mm-hmm. How about you?
So whenever he goes back down, for me, it's like a little bit of a drop. So, and maybe it's unrealistic of me, but I gave him a 6. Like you said, I thought it was admirable, the job he did for what he was given. I think we also got to see a little bit of the rage Cage, because the way he starts thinking too much of him is when he starts wielding the gun to extort money for the racketeering business. And I think he definitely shone in those moments of like using the gun to threaten people, I feel like that kind of a role is what slowly transitions him into his later better known action movies and when he really shines. So I definitely enjoyed that part, but again, because we saw him dip again after his last performance, it's a 6 for me.
Yeah. Completely understandable.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So any last thoughts?
Not really. Yeah. Not my favorite one. Maybe 4th favorite, 3rd favorite, kind of in the middle. It's definitely not the worst that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
I put it mid of the table.
Right. I must say I definitely enjoyed seeing the dynamic of African Americans versus the Irish versus, like you said, the Italians. For me personally, I definitely enjoy mob movies or like documentaries a whole lot, because it's a side of life that like personally, of course, I don't get to see, or even people who know mobsters and stuff, unless you're in their inner circle, it's probably really hard to know all these things. Mm-hmm. So for me, whenever I get a lens into a life that's like so kind of hierarchical or kind of like backstage or like underground, I always find those things very fascinating. So even though the plot wasn't very good, I enjoyed the fact that it showed us how showbiz, and especially in a place like New York, showbiz and mobs were so integrated in the past. There was a Netflix docuseries recently about the famous 5 mob families of New York. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a really good watch if you get a chance. Those families was what I think The Sopranos was based on. So yeah, I really find it fascinating to watch these kind of movies or shows.
Ooh, got the heebie-jeebies. Well, let's shake that thing.
Thanks for joining us on our 6th episode of The Uncaging. We just discussed The Cotton Club, a 1984 Francis Ford Coppola movie. Please leave us a review wherever you are listening on and share with your friends. You can send us voice notes that we will feature on next week's episode at anchor.fm/theuncaging. You can also send us an email with shoutouts and comments and get yourself a mention on the upcoming episode. You can write us at theuncaging@gmail.com. Next week, we're looking forward to watching and reviewing Birdie, Nick Cage's 7th movie and second co-starring role. Also, in other Nick Cage news, he just announced a Netflix collaboration of a show called The History of Swearing. So we are extremely excited to watch that, and as the episodes come out, we might just mention them or make mini episodes or whatever, but we are extremely looking forward to that. It is coming out on January 5th of next year, so less than a month.
We are extremely excited to watch it. Send us an email again if you want us to review those in particular. But if not, we'll think about it. Depending on how good it is, we can have that as a side project. Quick shout out to, again, everyone. Thank you for listening. I heard from another lab mate this week, Warren. He said he checked us out and he really enjoyed it. I'm happy whenever someone reaches out to us, It's nice to have like made someone enjoy our show. So thank you Warren, and thanks everyone for listening. Also another shout out to Mohammed. Our friend Mohammed is getting engaged and married later or next year in March. So congratulations, Mohammed. Shout out to our friend who could not be here. We hope to see you sometime in the future. I don't want to mention his name because I don't want his future employers or something blacklist him. What if they're a big fan of this show and they're like, oh, this guy was mentioned to be kind of tardy, so we don't want to hire him, so I'm not going to name drop. But please join us at some point.
When he actually joins, we won't even say that he was the one
exactly,
that missed the opportunity, just so you can't backtrack. So just to keep things on the safe side, very excited to have him in.
Those who know us from college know him to be a hipster.
Slightly a hipster.
Slightly. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. We really enjoyed breaking down this week's movie, and see you again in the future. Have a good week ahead.
Have a good week.
All right, boom.
Woo, got the heebie-jeebies. Well, shake that.